Yeah, so we're just, everybody who's here knows, it's so difficult to penetrate the mainstream media and mainstream thinking. So that's what this event is about. As Nancy's concepts, Nancy's bringing forward, just trying to get that out into people's consciousness, and just have people think of things differently. So our next speaker would like to have David Oppenheimer with Action Corps Rhode Island is going to share some thoughts.
Yes. How's this? Great. I want to address three things. I want to pick up on what Nancy said about the obscenity of having such a large amount of money appropriated for war while they're cutting back the BBB every day. You're not hearing anything about you're not hearing what you hear about the BBB. Oh, we're worried about how high the price tag is going to be. We're worried about inflation. We need means testing. But you don't get any of that with the Pentagon spending. And it's interesting because people should know that about 10 years ago, because of a congressional mandate, every department of the government had to undergo an audit. And the Pentagon said, oh, we can't do an audit. We need 6 years to prepare for an audit. And then it took them 7, and then they flunked 3 audits in 4 years. Billions of dollars in unaccounted for. Okay? They hired a separate set of accountants to try and make the original audit work, and that cost millions of dollars too, but they couldn't make it work. So billions unaccounted for, and now they tell us they can't do another audit for 10 years. And the response of the Armed Services Committees has been, with billions of dollars missing, to throw more money at them every year. So this is the background. They're saying, oh, we can't afford this for the BBB. We can't afford that. They're gutting, eye and dental care for seniors. There's going to be no paid leave. Okay, the $25 billion that Congress decided to give to the Pentagon above what Biden requested, it's estimated that $22.5 billion would be the cost of 12 weeks of paid family leave for a year for the entire country. Okay? But we can't have nice things because it's all going to the Pentagon. So that's my first point. They're complete. The money's disappeared, and the Armed Services Committee doesn't care about it. That's the first thing. The second thing is this process was not open and democratic. Okay, the process in the House was they heard amendments on the floor, but the Senate never did that. Okay? And in the last week or two, we've heard about Republican obstruction of amendments. Well, the ship had already sailed on the democratic process of having amendments on the floor. What happened was they said, well, we're going to put it in a manager's package. And the thing about the manager's package is that any one senator can stop it. Last year, the Republicans had a majority, and Senator Imhoff thought he had a manager's package all set, but Tom Cotton didn't like one thing, and it all went down the drain. So leaving everything for the manager's package allows one senator to veto it. So setting up a process that way, the way they did that, the way the Armed Services Committee, the Senate Armed Services Committee, chaired by our Senator Reid, was dooming amendments to begin with. Okay, and I want to discuss 2 of the amendments that went down here before I move on to Yemen to finish up. One of them was the amendment, the War Powers Act for Yemen. Okay, and Ro Khanna sponsored that in the House, and it passed. And you have to remember that a similar bill passed under Trump with bipartisan majorities in both houses passing it, but Trump vetoed it, and they couldn't override the veto. But there were 54 votes in the Senate for this, okay? But it never got a vote in the Senate. And Ro Khanna's response, he talks about how it was very important to get this passed, to tell to show Saudi Arabia that they can't do what they want, and we're not going to enable them to do things. But instead of standing up for it, this disappeared. But Khanna wrote or spoke after the amendment disappeared. He said, a small group of senators, for reasons that are not publicly explained or challenged, exercised the veto over these measures, even though most have repeatedly gone through regular order, have been passed by the House with overwhelming bipartisan support, and enjoy bipartisan backing in the Senate. So this was a closed process to begin with, and these things were ticketed to disappear when they went to the manager's package. Another thing that disappeared, by the way, was Senator Gillibrand's bill, again, that had bipartisan support, which would have transferred prosecution of sexual assault crimes and related offenses, serious ones, kidnapping and murder and manslaughter, to special prosecutors outside of the military chain of command. Okay? And that too was gutted and disappeared. And Senator Gillibrand said, the majority of our colleagues have recognized that our bill has the support of bipartisan filibuster-proof majority in the Senate and a majority in the House. But the will of the members was ignored in the NDAA, whose committee leaders stripped our reforms from the bill behind closed doors, despite assurances that they would follow regular order. And after she said this, ultra-conservative Republican Senator Josh Hawley, who's no feminist, he opposed the drafting of women, for example, was proud of that. He backed up Gillibrand, and he noted that Gillibrand had gone through proper order, that it had a bipartisan majority, had bipartisan support for her measure, and then he said, yet DOD every time succeeds in gutting it. So that's the process we have here, and those were decisions made by the chairs of committees. Okay, my final point is on Yemen. There is language in the bill on Yemen, and it's basically loaded with loopholes. The section of the bill is labeled as if it is trying to end the United States involvement in the Yemen war. You got to remember, Biden said he was going to end our involvement in that war or in offensive measures, and basically he's lying. You know, the way they avoided it is they spent months denying there was a blockade. So let me just get back to this bill, because this is more of a piece. If you look at the language that's in there, okay, first of all, there are loopholes. Anything that can be called defensive rather than offensive is allowed to happen. Okay, so a missile hits a dam, and they say, "Oh, we were shooting at another drone." Done. The Secretary of Defense can say this was needed for national security. That's fine. But the real sneaky stuff, well, first of all, it's appalling. We're going to have a 90-day investigation to see if the Saudis have bombed civilian targets in Yemen.
Oh, for crying out loud.
That's insane. Okay, now that in itself is ridiculous. I mean, you know, you've had news reports where they can show you the serial numbers on the bombs, like the one that killed the bus full of schoolboys. Okay, so, you know, we have evidence, and the Times did a piece, 4 or 5 different specific examples. You can trace the serial numbers, you can find out where these weapons were made, etc. But it's even more insidious than that, because part of this says we also want to establish which branches of the Saudi military was involved in these things. And the reason they want to establish that is because they can say, oh, we are now going to cut off participation of this branch from our aid, meaning that every other branch is still open for business. So that is what the language in the NDAA is, as opposed to the Sanders-Khanna amendments that would have really had some teeth, that would have really cut off our cooperation in targeting. And you have to remember that for years we were giving the Saudis no intelligence that told them areas, civilian areas, not to bomb, targets not to hit, and they proceeded to drop bombs on these targets, some of them repeatedly. Even Senator Reid expressed dismay about this back in 2018. So we need to know that. And so I just want to point to my little poster here with this picture. Child starving to death, others wounded from having ordnance dropped on them. And it says this could have been stopped if the Senate adopted the House's Yemen amendment. Chairman Reid did not allow a vote. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Thank you very much, David. Those are key highlights that go beyond just the top line figure. You know, what has been lost, what some of the progress that could have been made through the military authorization process.